بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Today, inshallah, we study another important topic in this field of Quranic anthropology, and that is about human dignity or honor. Karamat-e Insan. This is very fundamental topic, especially today in the world. There is great need and interest in this topic. It has also practical significance, and I believe that this is going to be more and more important, and I believe that this would be very central in the movement of Imam Zaman Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, the issue of Karama. In some lectures I have explained this point and the connection between Imam Hussein and Imam Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, and how the issue of dignity is very important in Imam Hussein's movement and then in the movement of Imam Zaman. In du'a iftitah we have Allahumma inna narghabu ilayka fi dawlatin karimah abtu wa taj'aluna fiha min ad-du'at ila ta'atik wal qadati ila sabilik wa tarzuquna biha karamat ad-dunya wal akhirah. So the topic of karama is very important. Alhamdulillah, some years ago we had a series on this topic in month of Ramadan in Islamic Center, and now they are being published in a Spiritual Quest. So you might have seen those papers on dignity being published in Spiritual Quest. Also in the Hawz Akhlaq series we had few sessions on this topic of karama. The late Ayatollah Mutahhari believes that this is the center of Islamic ethics. So it's a very fundamental topic. Now let's go to the book Ma'arif al-Qur'an by the late Ayatollah Misbah and see what he has studied and discussed here. He says that from ancient time this discussion was there at how central are human beings in this universe, what is their position, are they better than other creatures, other beings or not. Some people have believed that human beings are maybe the highest. Some people may find this difficult, and they say maybe it's because we are ourselves human beings and we attach too much value to ourselves. Some people refer to human intelligence, to technology, civilizations, etc. Some people who are critical, they may refer to all the mischief that has been there, wars, etc. Similar, of course, this is what I say, similar to what the angels were concerned about when Allah said He's going to put His vicegerent on the earth. They say أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ. So there are different ideas, different opinions. Then Ayatollah Misbah refers to humanism, those who believe in centrality of human beings. There has been an idea from time of some Sufists that man is measure of everything. I don't know if you have come across this. I have mentioned this in the book Ethical Relativism. Man is measure of everything, meaning that we are the center of the world, plus even we are center of the truth. We can decide what is right, what is wrong. Based on our decision, they become right and wrong, etc. So, emphasis on centrality of human beings has been there, but now some philosophers have tried to make a philosophy based on this. And it has affected different aspects of our outlook. Even, for example, Ayat Misbah says that in some countries, based on this, they say all human beings, even criminals, should be considered as dignified. Of course, we say every person has to be considered dignified, but they mean that they should not be punished. And punishment is against human dignity. We should just consider them as ill people who need treatment. Of course, very difficult position to hold, that a criminal who deliberately kills people is just ill, and we need, psychologists and psychotherapists, work on him or help him. One say, Hitler should not be punished and just, needs treatment in hospital, psychological hospital or things like this. But anyway, some people have gone to this extreme that say everything should be redefined and redesigned and rearranged based on centrality of human beings. You know that Ayatollah Mutahhari is in Ayatollah Mutahhari's works, not here. He says that Abu al-Ala Mu'arrikh, he asked why human beings are treated differently in Islamic Sharia. For example, if someone commits a theft with certain conditions which are there in jurisprudence, then at the end, if every condition is there and it's in a very clearly defined position, then the fingers of the thief would be cut off. But if someone cuts off finger or fingers of another person, the compensation and diya that has to pay is much more. So why in certain cases, not all the thieves, in certain cases, for a smaller amount that this thief has stolen, his fingers would be cut off. But when someone cuts off the finger or fingers of another person, the diya or compensation is more. And then the answer is, one of our scholars, makes it in a poem, that it's the amana, izzul amanate, the dignity of being honest and trustworthy makes fingers very valuable. But if someone is criminal, this criminal character, they would reduce the value of his fingers. So all the fingers are not valuable the same way. All people are not valuable the same way. Of course, we believe every human being has to be receiving some level of honor and dignity. لَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. But they are not the same. You cannot say because they look the same, they have the same body, so we treat Ibrahim and Namrud the same way. We treat Musa and Pharaoh the same way. We treat Hitler, for example, a great ethical person, the same way. So this is the opening of this discussion, just to let you know that it's a very hot topic, very much debated. Now let's go to the Quran. In the Holy Quran, we find different verses about human beings. Of course, some verses are about human beings in general, some might be about a specific individuals, good people or bad people. We are now more concerned about general verses, not verses which talk about Musa or Pharaoh or Ibrahim or Namrud, etc. General verse. These general verses sometimes praise human beings. For example, in Surah Al-Isra, verse 70, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We have certainly honored children of Adam. On the other hand, there are verses that also may generally criticize or even blame human beings. Like Surah Ibrahim, verse 34. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَظَلُومٌ كَفَّارٌ. Or Surah Al-Ma'arij, verse 19. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ خُلِقَ هَلُوعًا. Halu' is interpreted as impatient, restless, and greedy. Someone who is impatient and restless and also greedy. Some verses also mix these two. So some verses praise, some verses blame and criticize, some verses mix. Like in Surah At-Tin, the fig, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. So here there is positive side and negative side. Someone may ask, why Allah first puts us in a high position, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ, then He sends us to the lowest of the low. ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. So these are verses of the Quran that if someone is not familiar may wonder what is happening here. Sometimes there is praise, sometimes there is blame, sometimes there is mixed. Why? But if we study the Quran properly, we realize that actually the Quran is very clear here. Quran has a very comprehensive and systematic approach to this topic. In the book Self-Knowledge, I have put 2 chapters. One is about positive attributes of human beings in the Quran, and the other one is negative attributes. And then there is a conclusion. I have benefited from books by Ayat Misbah, Ayat Mutahari, and Allama Ja'fari, rahmatullah alayhim. So if you are interested, you may refer to that book, Self-Knowledge, and see the way I have listed these things and made the conclusion. But right now we focus on the book Ma'arif al-Qur'an, and has the main points, and it's adequate. The key that is to be always remembered in this discussion is to distinguish between two ways of evaluation. Sometimes we evaluate human beings in a takwini way, in a generative, or you can say existential way, takwini, wujudi, which has nothing to do with morality. This is about existential side. Sometimes we evaluate human beings in a moral way, based on voluntary actions and qualities. These are two different things. Verses of the Quran sometimes refer to takwini side, to existential or generative side, and sometimes refer to arzashi or akhlaqi side, to the moral or to the value-based approach. For example, sometimes we may compare human beings with plants and animals and non-living beings. We see that there are similarities because they are all jism, but human beings are the highest. We have jism nami, living being which is growing, and then if it is hassas mutaharrik bil irada becomes haywan. If it is sensitive, has understanding and acts voluntarily, moves voluntarily, it's haywan. And then human beings that in addition to being jism nami hassas mutaharrik bil irada, they are also able to think and argue, natiq. This hierarchy of beings in this world, this is in this world, and we are partly in this world, at least our body is in this world, is like this. First non-living beings, then living beings which are at the level of plants, and then animals, and then human beings. This comparison is correct. And this comparison is not from a moral perspective, because we cannot say animals are worse morally, or plants are worse than animals. Animals are worse than human beings. The non-living beings are the worst. No, this is not a moral issue. Yes, we can say they are lowest in degree of existence or in perfection. Some people thought that perfection is only about morality. When we talk, about, for example, perfection in spirituality. But, from philosophical perspective, we use perfection in a broader sense. Any actuality, any fi'liyat is considered as kamal, as perfection. So human beings are more perfect than animals. Animals are more perfect than plants. Plants are more perfect than non-living beings. This is not moral thing. It means in existence, in the forms, in the substantial forms that they have, they are higher. This is one way to look at the existential takwini side. Another way is to look at moral side. When it comes to moral side, the root is free will, ikhtiyar. Inshallah, we'll talk about ikhtiyar more later. Animals, if we suppose that they don't have free will, we will inshallah discuss this briefly later. If we suppose that animals have no free will, so morally they are not going to be praised or blamed. Plants are not going to be praised or blamed. If a plant is growing well or not growing well, we are not going to praise or blame that plant. It's not like a student who doesn't study or studies well. We praise or blame. But for animals, for plants, for non-living beings, there is no space, no chance for praising or blaming. Why? Because there is no free will. Okay? So in this way, then we cannot compare. From takwini side, we can compare. But from ethical side, we cannot compare and say human beings are better than animals, meaning more virtuous than animals, or more vicious than animals from this aspect. Yes, I'm sure it has come to your mind. Then why we say أولئك كالأنعام بل هم أضل? Some people are like animals or even worse. Why we are comparing? Is it takwini comparison or is it akhlaqi comparison? Yeah, the answer is that this is takwini comparison, but based on akhlaqi approach of human beings. What does it mean? We are not here talking about the way Allah has created us and the way Allah has created animals and plants, so that we can say that we are above them. Takwinan, we are better than them. We're not talking about that, because we are not saying everyone is like that now. Everyone is better. We are saying some people are worse than animals. What we are saying is this: human beings, if they misuse their free will, if they make wrong moral choices, not only they are going to be morally blamed, but they are going to lose some of their perfections. So they will go lower in the ranks of existence, in the ranks of perfection. And this is why we say أولئك كالأنعام بل هم أضل. We don't want to say those animals are morally better than these people, because those animals have no morality if we suppose they have no free will. We want to say human beings have morality because they have free will, and if they misuse their free will and do bad things and make bad choices, then they will lose their existential perfection and they can go lower than animals. So let us now refer to some of these verses. These are some general remarks. I put also some of the things that Ayat Misbah says later, because I thought it's good to be mentioned right now. But now some of the verses. In Surah Al-Isra number 70, which we mentioned quickly before, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. Very important. We have certainly honored children of Adam. وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ وَرَزَقْنَاهُمْ مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِّمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. Ayat Misbah leans towards saying that this karramna is takwini, although may not be agreeable to all, and I don't think Ayatollah Mutahari looks at it this way. He says, لَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ is about non-ethical, non-moral things. It's about things like what we find in the same ayah. For example, Allah has made us in the way that we can carry our goods, and even for our own transportation, we can use animals, you can use rivers, winds, etc. to move in lands or on the sea. Animals, whatever they want to do, they have to do it themselves. If they want to move themselves or move something, they have to do it themselves. But we have been given ability to manage powers in the nature and powers of animals. وَرَزَقْنَاهُمْ مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ, and we have given them from pleasant food and fruits, etc. So he says these two sentences can be interpretation for karama in لَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. And also in some hadith, it is said that karama, which is mentioned here, is the ability, referring to the ability of human beings to stand on their feet. Unlike animals that they have to move on 2 hands and 2 feet, we can stand on the feet. We are mustawa al-qama. We can stand up and rise. So he says this type of hadith also supports the idea that this karama is takwini. He refers to some verses about transportation. I think we don't need to discuss, it's clear. And then وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِمَّنْ خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا. He says this also seems to be takwini. Allah has created us in the way that we are better than many of creatures, not all creatures, we are better than many creatures. Takwinan, we are better than animals, we are better than plants, we are better than stone and food, etc. But we are not better than angels. When we are created by default, we are not better. Similar to this وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا, which is takwini, you can find some other verses. Like وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا, Surah Nisa, verse 28. Man is created in a weak form. It's takwini. Compared to many other creatures, we have less power. Compared to angels, compared to our Creator, of course, certainly, we are very weak. But even compared to some creatures, we are weak. This is not a blame. This is the way we are created. خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. But there are also verses which talk about the ethical side, and it's based on values. There is blame and or praise. That is where there is ikhtiyar, there is free will. Human beings, before making use of their free will, they are not ethically judged. And after they make moral choices, they are not equally judged. I repeat, this is very important. Human beings, before making choices, they are not ethically judged. They are not ethically judged. Yeah? 2 human beings have not yet made any choice. We cannot say which one is ethically better than the other, which one is more virtuous, which one is more precious. They have not yet made any choice. And after they make choice, we cannot then equally praise them or blame them. It depends on what choice they have made. أَفَمَنْ كَانَ مُؤْمِنًا كَمَنْ كَانَ فَاسِقًا لَا يَسْتَوُونَ. Someone may make good choices, someone may make bad choices. They are not the same. So we cannot have general value-based statement about human beings to say they are all good, they are all bad. No. When the Quran says لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ, it's creation, takwin. Then he says ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, etc. So this ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنوا, so this is the ethical side based on the choices. Or in Surah Al-Ma'arij, when Allah says إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ خُلِقَ هَلُوعًا, then later says إِلَّا الْمُصَلِّينَ. So Musallin are people who can be excluded based on their choices. So some verses of the Quran relate to the takwini side, to the existential side of human beings, and if there is any credit, it's indeed for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who created us that way. Yes, we exhibit that beauty, But Allah has given us that. We are not to be praised morally, because this is the way we are created. Some verses of the Quran are about human choices, and the value that would be different. Here we have people who are better than others, and we have then human beings who go and rise higher in the ladder and ranks of perfection. Why? Because perfection, although it's real, it's existential, but as we said, based on what moral choice you make, you can become more perfect or less perfect. There's connection between facts and values. This is a very important topic. They are not disconnected. Based on the facts, we can define values, and based on the values we develop, we change factually, we change existentially. Some human beings reach the point that they wish they were soil. Ya laytani kuntu turaba. Surah Naba verse 40. Because they have degraded themselves. Some people are so high that they are very close to Allah. Allah says in Surah Qamar verse 55, في مقعد صدق عند مليك مقتدر. عند مليك مقتدر. They're very close. It's not geographical or physical closeness. Or for example, in Surah Tahrim verse 11, lady, the wife of Pharaoh, she said, Rabbi ibn li indaka baytan fil jannah. Imra'at Pharaoh, she said, Rabbi ibn li indaka baytan fil jannah. وَنَجَّنِي مِنْ فِرْعَوْنَ وَعَمَلِهِ وَنَجَّنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. So a human being can reach the position that can have a place close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Such people, even angels would serve them. They welcome them, they look after them, they say Salamun alaykum tibtum fadkhuluha khalidin, etc. But we can also become sharrat dawab, the worst of living beings. Or Surah A'raf verse 179, لهم قلوب لا يفقهون بها ولهم أعين لا يبصرون بها ولهم آذان لا يسمعون بها أولئك كالأنعام بل هم أضل أولئك هم الغافلون. And also some other verses, Surah Al-Anfal verse 22, إن شر الدواب عند الله الصم البكم الذين لا يعقلون. Surah Al-Anfal 55, إن شر الدواب عند الله الذين كفروا فهم لا يؤمنون. Surah Al-Hajj 46, فإنها لا تعمى الأبصار ولكن تعمى القلوب التي في الصدور. Human beings can degrade themselves and become worse than other animals. But they can also raise themselves with taqwa, with morality, etc. إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم. They can become better than other human beings, let alone better than animals, etc. Ayat Misbah says maybe also there is a third group that they are not going higher or lower. These are, for example, people that either they have issues with making choices because, for example, they have some mental disability. Maybe they are not able to understand things properly, so they are excused. We cannot say they are worse than animals. No, why? They are not worse than animals, even takwinan. Or, for example, those who are excused because of difficult situation that they are in. They are not given freedom, for example, or they are not given enough information. These are mustada'afun with respect to understanding and information and knowledge. they can be excused also. Okay, this is the discussion about karama. Then the next discussion is about human free will, about ikhtiyar. If you have any question, any comments, please put forward. And then, inshallah, I will discuss about free will. Inshallah, will have another 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes. Do you have any questions?